I'll ask you when I call your division, don't be shy, just open your microphone and identify yourself. I've gone through 25, 24. I'm now going to move to Division 23. Let's start with 23 West. Are there any Kiwanians from 23 West? 23 East?
23 West, PD.
West.
Yes.
DP Ornette. Go ahead.
Good evening, and thank you for the invitation. I wish to bring you greetings on behalf of our president and other members of the club. I'm the only one on at the moment, but I expect others to join. I'm looking forward to a great meeting.
Thank you. Thank you to you and members of Kiwanis Club of Sunshine City. I should take the opportunity, I'm sure the president will go on later on, and all of the Kiwanians who supported our recent fish fry that was held last week. Friday, is it, President? What date? That's correct. All of your support, and we know that there's room for improvement, and we're going to work towards making it bigger and better. But we also would like to thank you for your participation. All of the proceeds will help us in our various Kiwanis activities and to help the children and the others who are in need. So again, on behalf of the club, I'd like to thank everybody for their participation. Still on the introductions though, that was just a side note. We're in Division 23 West. We heard from Sunshine City. Is there anybody else from 23 West? If not, we're going to move to 23 East. Any Kiwanians from 23 East joining us this evening? Looking at the attendees, I see you, President Eurydice, and I see some others. Okay, let's move to 23 Central then.
Greetings from Cyber Connect.
Cyber Connect. Go ahead, Director Tamara. I see you. You're recognized.
I'm currently a designator of one, but I know that others will be joining your meeting. Thank you.
Okay. All right. And you know, this evening we're going to be talking about South Africa. 30 years since Nelson Mandela gave up leadership, 30 years of the ANC, and it's a monumental change now that they've lost majority in the South African Parliament. And I'm sure DP Stewart is going to share with us some insight, and we look forward to your participation and your thoughts about what's happening in South Africa and how it's going to affect Jamaica, or how it's going to affect the geopolitical environment, because as you know, Jamaica is very well tied in more ways than one with South Africa. So it's always relevant, whatever is happening in South Africa and how it's going to affect Jamaica. So that's what's going to be this evening. Later on, we're going to be discussing South Africa. So we look forward to your thoughts, you know, Director Tamara and others. So welcome again from Kiwanis School of Kingston. We're still on 23 Central. Any other?
Good evening. This is President Bashiva from Kiwanis Club of Constant Spring. With me on the call is PVP Anthea, Chairman Sean, and I would be joined by others in a few moments. Looking forward to a very robust discussion.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for coming, and all the members from your club. We always appreciate your presence.
Thank you.
Most welcome. Any other Kiwanians from Central? We're still in Division 23 Central.
P.E. Stephen, good evening. How are you doing?
I'm fine. I'm President Eurydice. I see you.
Yes. And I am here with a friend of the club, my cousin Barry Ellis, and Director Designate Jay. I'm sure others will join soon, but as of now, just three of us. So thank you for the invite. And like the previous speaker said, I'm looking forward to this robust discussion. Thank you so much.
Robust and spirited. Thank you. Yes, indeed. And I see you, Director Designate Jay. Always glad to have you in the house. I know you're a regular member of our meetings. Who else do I see? I'm just taking a quick scan. We're in 23 Central. Are there any other guests? Non-Kiwanians, SLPs? Please
yes.
introduce yourself. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, my cousin Barry,
Oh,
Barry Ellis.
Barry, yes, I did. Barry, welcome to Barry. Your guest
He's-
of your club. Yes, I recognized him. And
he's a
welcome, Barry.
regular visitor. He's a regular visitor.
Oh, okay. But we still welcome him anyway. And so is he a member of your club, or is he planning to become a member of your club?
He's not yet, you know, let me say he's a friend of the club. And as soon as he makes a decision,
Yes.
we will gladly receive him. But in the interim, he's just
I'm just giving him a little encouragement, a little push.
yes.
Yes.
Encouragement and all that.
Yes, indeed. Kiwanis is a good movement. So
Yes.
Barry, think about it. Okay. Any other clubs from Central? I think I saw New Kingston and some others joining us. We're now up to 29 members. So anybody else? We're in the introduction part of the program. So again, any Kiwanians, non-Kiwanians, please introduce yourself. We would like to recognize all of the persons who are here this evening. I think I see DLG Gerthlin. Welcome, DLG Gerthlin. Glad to have you here as usual.
Oh, Michelle.
Thank you, V.
Calling Michelle. Mobile.
Anybody else? Last going once. Don't be shy, please. We'd like to know who is in the meeting, because I notice a lot of people haven't opened their camera, so we're just seeing names. So I think I see LGD Janet is joining us.
I'm Justin Baker from KCFAB.
Can you say that again, please? I didn't hear you.
So
we have
from KCFAB.
KC5, we have 4 members on. Jacinth just identified herself. She's treasurer designate. And we have secretary designate Shernet and director designate Colleen, I think I saw, and I'm DP Paulette.
From Kiwanis Club of? Sorry.
Friends Across Borders.
Friends Across Borders. Okay, thank you. Welcome. A large delegation, so we're happy to have you here. And remember also, you can contribute both on the microphone and also in the chat. So any thoughts you have, any emotions, any feedback, you can put it in the chat also. You will see that we'll see that. I think somebody has their microphone on, so we're getting some feedback. But we're still in introductions. We're at 23 Central, and we're also recognizing any guests.
DP, sorry, PD Stephen. I think it's Jacinth from KCFAB.
Jacinth, can you mute your microphone, please? There you go. Okay. Is there any other members? If not, welcome again to everybody, and we look forward to your a good meeting. Back to you, President Newton.
Sorry, there was also director designate Nicole from KCFAB. My apologies. I didn't see her just now.
She just joined. Okay.
She joined early.
Okay. Director, okay, we got you. Anybody else? We're closing off the introductions. If there's nobody else, back to you, President Newton.
Thank you, PD Stephen. Thank you, and thanks to all of those who have joined. And also, let me just extend what PD Stephen has said. Our heartfelt thanks to those members, those persons online, whether you're a Kiwanian or not, who participated in our recent Barbie Fry. As you know, all the clubs want to do a whole lot, but without cash, there's not much we can do. So we really appreciate your support. Okay, At this time, we are going to go into apologies for absences. Secretary William, do you have any apologies?
I have none. I have not received any. Yes, but I know that the treasure organ is off the island.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay. And with that, we are back to PD Stephen with birthdays, anniversaries, and any other special occasion that we need to celebrate with each other.
Yes, thank you, President Newton. So we're now into the month of June. Unfortunately, hurricane month, but also it's a month that a lot of people have birthdays and special occasions. So I am now going to share with everybody fellow Kiwanians who celebrate a birthday or an anniversary for the week of June 4th to June 11th. First of all, we start on the 4th. Today, Kiwanian George Beckford's wife, Allison, celebrates her birthday today. So special birthday greetings to Allison today. Tomorrow, Marcia, wife of DP Earl Spencer, celebrates her birthday. I don't think DP Earl is on. I hope he remembers her birthday and puts in place the necessary arrangements. But special greetings to her tomorrow on her birthday. Also tomorrow on the 5th, past Chairman Carrington Grant celebrates his birthday. And keeping with past Chairman Carrington, we move to the 9th of June. And on the 9th of June, he and his wife, Elsie, celebrate their anniversary on the 9th of June. So two very important dates for Carrington coming up. And then on the 11th of June, Kiwanian Trevor Ford celebrates his birthday. So those are it from the Kiwanis Club of Kingston. But as usual, I'm extending an open invitation if there's anybody on the call who also has a birthday or anniversary or special occasion that they'd like to share this week. Is there anybody celebrating any special occasion? Going once, going twice. If not, that's it for birthdays and anniversaries. And back to you, President Newton.
Thank you. Thank you, PD Stephen. And DP Stewart, please remind DP Earl, sir, that his anniversary is coming up. Okay. We love him, but none of us really.
His anniversary, President, it's his wife's birthday.
His wife's birthday is coming up. We love him, but none of us want to have to put him up. All right.
President Newton, give me
yes, sir.
One second. I had given a special shout out to one of our members, asking him to join us. He's one of us, but I just want to say, I see Mike Archer has joined us, and one of the reasons why I especially reached out to him is because he actually worked in South Africa.
One second, DP Stewart. I don't know if it's just for me, but you are pretty low.
All right, I just move my mic in a better position.
That is great, because I heard what you said, but I want them to hear what you said.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge that Mike Archer, who is one of our members, has joined us. I see him online, and I give him a special invitation because he worked in South Africa for many years ago, and even met Nelson Mandela. He has a photo of it. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Glad you could make it, Mike. Okay, back to you, Prez.
Thank you, DP Stewart, and thank you, Sir Archer, for joining us. I remember when we did Up Close and Personal with you. We were all in awe of the many places that you have been and done business. So we're glad that you're online with us tonight, to help add some amount of body to what is going to be presented by DP Stewart. All right. At this time, we are moving into Kiwanis education. I know LG Desmond is supposed to be doing Kiwanis education, but I'm not seeing him online. Are you online, LG Desmond? No? DLG Willie?
Yes, sir.
Then
All right.
I know you always have something on hand for Kiwanis education, and
Sure.
I consider it such an important part of what we do here. I'm asking if you could just give us something.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I quickly picked up my standard form for club bylaws, and it opened up at Article 19, which deals with finance. Many of us are aware of what finance is in the club, but we always need to be reminded. Section 1, not later than October 15th, separate budgets of estimated income and expenditures for the year, October 1 to September 30, for the administrative and community service funds shall be adopted by the Board of Directors. Section 2, the club books of accounts shall be audited at least once each year. The auditors shall be named by the Board of Directors. The auditors shall be familiar with financial statements and should reconcile bank statements if necessary and conduct tests of income and expenditures for the past year. The auditors may be club members, but shall not be the secretary or the treasurer. A copy of the auditor's report shall be provided to the current board of directors and upon request to any club member. Section 3, the board of directors shall determine the official depository or depositories and shall designate those persons who shall sign checks. Section 4, if a club is dissolved, resigns, has its charter revoked, or otherwise ceases operations, and if there are funds or other club assets remaining after club obligations are paid for, which the last board of directors had made no provision, then the treasurer shall pay such funds to and donate such assets to the Kiwanis International Foundation, in our case, Foundation of Jamaica. President Newton, that is your Kiwanis education this evening. I trust one or two of our Kiwanis may have learned something from that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, DLG Willie. If nobody else learned anything, I certainly did. So, thank you, sir.
Okay.
All right. We are at the point now where we have a DP Stewart will lead us into a very important topic, and DP Stewart needs no introduction, because we see him being the man who does this week after week after week. I must say though, it's a very interesting topic because even though it's for me personally, it's I feel a profound sense of sadness that we are at the ANC has lost in that short space of time, knowing what South Africa went through. The ANC has lost absolute majority in their parliament. You feel sad that it has happened that quickly, but I'm pretty sure no one online right now is surprised that it has happened. But DP Stewart is the man with the information, and so I hand over to DP Stewart to take us through this section that says 30 years after Mandela, the ANC has lost absolute majority in the South African Parliament. What next? Where do they go? What will happen after this? So DP Stewart, it's yours, your floor, sir.
Okay, thank you, President Newton, and fellow Kiwanians and guests. I'm glad you could make it. It is my pleasure to share some information. I mean, I have this interest. I have an interest in Africa. I remember some months ago we focused on West Africa because of what was happening there. And I almost have to consider Haiti part of the same context because we also focused on Haiti. And now with the situation that is happening now in South Africa, it really struck me that this is something, that we should share so that, we're all abreast of the situation. And that's what I hope to accomplish tonight. Let me just give a little idea of what I hope to cover. I want to give a little background to the history, since we had black let's call it, since Black people could vote in South Africa, with the ascension of Nelson Mandela as the first president. I'm going to give a little background on that. And I'm going to look at a little overview of the electoral system that South Africa has. It's quite interesting, in terms of how they have structured it and how representation works. Then I want to put in context South Africa's importance in the world, as part of the, why it's relevant and why we should pay attention. When I look at the leaders who have actually been president of South Africa since the Mandela period, I look at the major parties. In fact, it's interesting to note that South Africa has over 50 parties. I mean, that sounds so strange to us. We barely have, let's call it maybe 3. I don't know if we have more than 3. Not that we are as big as South Africa, but just the fact that they have over 40, over 50, sorry, that is something to then I want to look at some of the way they govern in terms of the municipalities, the provinces, and the national scope. And then why is it that ANC has lost? Now, I don't necessarily agree that it's a bad thing. In other words, sometimes things need to evolve. And when you look at the current situation in South Africa in terms of unemployment, they have a serious situation of load shedding. There is the land situation. In other words, there are some things which are really not very good, and maybe it is a good time for a shake-up and a wake-up call for the ANC to start doing something. And there's this term that we use a lot in business in terms of it's really the term, but it doesn't have to be applied only to business, but it's known as, we use the term disruptor. I think really and truly South Africa needs a disruptor, because if things are not disrupted, they will remain the same. And if things remain the same, then I'm really sorry for the Black majority in South Africa based on where they are now, So I'm not one of those necessarily who think that the ANC losing the majority, and by majority, they needed to have more than 50% of the popular vote. And that's the majority we're talking about. And then they would have been totally on their own in terms of forming the government, picking the ministers, etc., etc. And we look at the election results that just took place, and the options that are open to the ANC, because they are still the party with the largest number of votes. They are about 40%. They're actually coming from about 57.5. But they are now at 40%. And interestingly, this is something I would touch on. But South Africa does not have, although they have seats in the National Assembly, it's not like in Jamaica where we vote for seats. We vote for individuals to win seats, and then the party with the most seats wins the election. In South Africa, it's done basically, you don't vote for people at the national level or at the provincial level. You vote for parties, and then it's the party with the popular vote, the one that has the majority of the popular vote, that becomes the government. And then so that's really how it is. So in fact, when I started doing the research, I was looking for seats, and then I was wondering, why is it I see reference to seats, but then I was wondering, why is they're not why is it they're talking more about the popular vote? And then I realized that it's really the popular vote, and then it's a proportional representation system that they have. So depending on your proportion of the total vote, that determines how many seats you get in the National Assembly. And the National Assembly has 400, I think it's 400 seats in the National Assembly. So South Africa, so they would have had to have had once they had a majority of the popular vote, then they would have a majority of the seats. So that's how their system works. And one of the things I'm going to end on is the policy implications for South Africa, because depending on who they decide to have a coalition with. Because, for example, if they were to join with, I'm going to get into it in more detail, but if they were to join with Party X, that party may have certain priorities that they consider that the policies, and then if they compromise, then that is going to lead in one direction. And then so it all depends on who they eventually settle with. So let's get cracking on the situation. As we said, the heading on my flyer says 30 years after Mandela. It's not really 30 years since Mandela left office. It's 30 years since he assumed office. So he assumed office in 1994. And elections are held every 5 years. So when you look back at the records, you will see 94, 99, and you can take it from there. 2004, 2009, 2014, 2019, and now it's 2024. And just to fit in the other part, this election takes care of the national level and also the provincial level. Think of the provinces as like our parishes, think of it like that. And then they have local government elections, which are like the cities and the towns. And that is done every 5 years as well, but not with the national election. They don't do it then. They do it, it's almost about midway the 5-year period that the national elections are held. So almost halfway. And then in those elections, they vote for people. People vote for a representative. So that's part of the structure. So in 1994, Mandela occupied the office until 1999. He declined to run for a second term, and he just felt that, it was time for somebody else. And I'm sure, he was getting a little bit on in age, of course, but he thought that was enough. And from 1999 to 2008, it was Thabo Mbeki who was the president of South Africa. Now, there were some little issues with Mbeki, because during the period of Mbeki, the deputy president was Jacob Zuma. And Zuma, from that period, was one who was being, there were charges, or there was a lot of murmuring about corruption, and this was at a point before he even became president. But what is interesting is that after this, charges were filed, and then the charges were dismissed, and it never went anywhere. And then Mbeki, he seemed to have suffered as a result of his pressure on Zuma, and he lost part of his term, because in 2008, somebody else took over the leadership of the presidency. He's probably the one name that we know the least of, and I'm not even sure if I know how to pronounce it properly, but I would call it Kagalima or Kalima. And his last name starts with M. Forgive me. It looks like Motlenthe. So pronounce it how you like. But he took over. Now, one of the reasons why he took over and to just serve out the term of presidency is because Mbeki was ousted. And then now at the end of that term, in the next period, the 2009, Jacob Zuma was the one who became president of South Africa. Now, he's a character in the sense that the corruption charges have been, they're rampant. Let's put it that way. In fact, there's even a situation where he used public funds I don't want to say remodel. Because it's not just a house. It was an estate kind of thing, and it was supposed to be. He justified it by saying it had security implications. It was like for his own security, and that was the reason why it was justifiable to use public funds to embellish his estate. But then, if you look at some of the things that were installed, like a swimming pool, that doesn't really sound like, it had much to do with security. So he definitely has a question mark about it in terms of his the whole corruption charges. And he was actually forced out. He seems to be, well, you can say he almost served out his term almost 2 years, because from 2009 to 2018, that's almost the 10-year cycle. But he was under this cloud. And in fact, he was charged, and they set up a commission of inquiry or something akin to that. They might have called it something a little different. And he refused to testify in front of the inquiry. And for that, he was sentenced to prison. He wasn't sentenced to prison for the actual criminal charges, but because he refused to testify. And that was delayed for a while. And eventually, based on the information I have, he did serve the time. So and then the person who succeeded him, and who was obviously in the political climate part of the political leadership at the time, is the one who took over, and that's the current president, Cyril Ramaphosa. And it's interesting that even now, Cyril Ramaphosa is being also accused in some circles about corruption. They gave the title of his farm gate, which is a reflection on some particular property and business that he has, that because of the Watergate, I guess they call it farm gate. So you can say that at least 3 presidents of South Africa have been somewhat tainted, and in some cases it is more obvious than others that the issue of corruption has been a problem. So the current president now is Cyril Ramaphosa, and he has been in power since 2018. In 2000, that he won a healthy majority at the last election, and this is his now 2024. It's now time for elections, and he has now lost that majority. So if you look at the popularity of the ANC, it rose to a high of about 70% at one time, and then it has been coming down. And now we have a situation now with Cyril Ramaphosa. Now, what the interesting thing now is that we have to now look at who are the parties that now exist. That because Ramaphosa now has to form an alliance, he has to form a coalition. Now he only has 40% of the popular vote, and he needs at least 50, but you don't want exactly 50, because you want to have a comfortable majority that you don't have to be looking over your shoulder and so on. So let's take a look at the leading parties that are below in terms of their. Sorry, I just have to decline this call. All right. The party that has come second to the ANC in, I think, the last 3 elections or so on, is called the Democratic Alliance, the DA. All right, we just use the DA term in the future. And this is if you wanted to simplify it, you could call them the White Party. But it's not probably fair to just call them the White Party because they are led by a white person, a white South African. Because a lot of Black people are, okay, in terms of the demographics in South Africa, they don't use the term colored anymore. They use the term mixed race. So he has a lot of support among mixed race and among whites and also Blacks. Now you might wonder why is this party as strong as it is in the recent elections, whereas you have ANC coming out with 40% of the popular vote, the DA has come out with about 21%. So they are a significant force in the whole political scenario in South Africa. Now, I need to interject here in terms of why this party might be as strong as it is. And it comes back to the structure. Remember, I spoke about provinces and I spoke about the cities and the towns. Now, the reason for that is the way the government is. All right, let's think of Jamaica. We have the Kingston and St. Andrew Corporation, and that's a municipality. We now have a Portmore section that has their own mayor. Montego Bay has a mayor, and so on. These would be the equivalent of the local government in South Africa. But we don't have a parish structure where we govern from the parish. So the provinces are, which I said, think of them like the parishes. That has a whole government structure. And so what happens in South Africa, just like how we had some parties, just as how we had some parties in Jamaica who control a particular municipality, and it may not be that of the governing party, right? Because of that, it's the same thing that happens in South Africa. So, but whereas we don't give a lot of credit to, at least we don't have a lot of news information that tells us how well each municipality is doing. I mean, I'm not aware of it. Because Kingston and St. Andrews is the biggest one, we'll focus on that. But I don't know if you all know how well Mandela is doing at the parochial level. I don't know if we actually know that. But in South Africa, because of the whole province structure, that a particular province, and I'm going to use an example, Western Cape, is run by the DA, that particular party. So there are opportunities for these other parties to demonstrate their ability to govern, because they're actually governing, and if the people are getting good services and so on, then they will probably vote for them. And when it comes down to the national election, they will vote for them as well. So the DA has done pretty well at some of the provincial levels, where they have demonstrated that they can govern. Okay, and so, for example, a city like Johannesburg, I think they have a coalition which includes the DA. So sometimes, just like at the national level, if nobody gets more than 50%, then parties will form coalitions and they govern. So each of these areas have their own little governments, and that is really the situation that we are faced with. But what it does do, it does provide an opportunity for the other parties who are not governing nationally to at least demonstrate that, because they're gonna have to provide. Whereas at the city level, they deal with sanitation, they deal with I can't remember all the different details. I have it written down somewhere. But at one level, at the provincial level, it steps up. Like, it would include education, probably schools, and it would include, some of these other things that are on another level. So as I'm saying, the DA has demonstrated that they have a pretty good track record. Okay, but would it be, so that's one party. Let me talk about another. Now, one party that does not show up on any of the previous elections is the MK party. Now, where did the MK party come from? This is the first time it contested the election. Now, it is associated with Zuma, but it's not Zuma who started the party, based on what I've been able to read. It was started about 14 months ago, but Zuma started supporting them. And because he was a former president of South Africa, people almost think it's his party. And in a sense, maybe it has become his party. But they went to the polls and have gotten almost 15% of the votes, which is pretty hefty. Let me just look back at my figures to make sure I have that one right. Yeah, 14% roughly. And so this has, and because they were part of the ANC, it looks like that they really just took a chunk out of the ANC. In other words, if that 14% had remained with the ANC would be forming the government today, right? But here's a little catch. Zuma has said, and here's where the different parties are now pulling privilege, not privilege, leverage is the word I meant, because they want to say, if I'm going to make certain demands. And one demand that Zuma has already made quite public is that if the MK party is to form a coalition with the ANC, Ramaphosa has to go. Okay? So let's leave that part in the background. And let's go to the next party. The next party is the EFF. It's Economic Freedom Fighter or something. I think that's what it stands for. It is led by this leader. His name is Julius Malema. Right? Now, Julius Malema was also part of the ANC, but he was a youth leader. He led the youth arm of the ANC. And as happens with youth, they are less patient about change, and rightly so, because if you look at what, a lot of things have not really changed. I wouldn't say nothing has changed, but a lot of things have remained the same in South Africa. Now, he is more of a leftist in terms of how typical politics would describe him. And he would also be described as more radical. For example, he is in favor of more or less the strategy that Mugabe used to recover the land, because he doesn't see why, although he has, maybe you could say he has toned it down a bit, in that he's not, but he's real, because the land situation is another issue I should mention. 70% of the land in South Africa is in the hands of white people, the whites, 70%. Obviously a hangover from the colonial and the apartheid period. And if you go right down, very little, less than 4% is in the hands of blacks. Not all the land is in use, and basically Malema feels that that he can't. This is an intolerable situation and should not continue to exist. Now, in the Constitution, it does provide some protection for the landowners, and the ANC is wedded to the Constitution, as I guess a government should be, but there's obviously a need for constitutional change. And whereas the DA, which is, just to remind you, the white party, let's call them the white party, they would obviously want things to remain pretty much the same. Malema wants to shake things up. And in fact, you can imagine that the business community and the international community would probably hate to see Malema as part of this whole coalition and getting close to the leadership of South Africa. Now, interestingly, based on Julius Malema's position, he only got 9.5%. So ANC and the EFF, that's the name of his party, don't quite cut it in terms of getting over that 50%. So they would have to bring in some of the either smaller parties if they're not gonna work with the DA or the MK. Remember, the MK is the one associated with Zuma, and the DA is, for better words, the white party. So now there is the only other party I'm gonna mention is called the IFP. It's really the Inkatha Freedom Party, and they are about 3.5%. But if you remember when I told you that South Africa has over 50 parties, there are a lot of little fractional percentages all over the place. But I would say that the top 5, including the IFP at 3.5%, are the only ones that are worth considering. Because if you have a lot of small splintered parties, I don't know, it might be a little bit difficult to coordinate that. But we don't know how that is gonna play out yet. So so now we have an idea of what the options are. And I personally believe, as I said before, South Africa needs a disruptor. Now, but what is gonna happen if that happens to and then investment falls, and then you have but let me something I should have let me go to some of the reasons why the ANC has been losing ground. That's you need to get an idea of why this is happening. Critical unemployment, especially among young people, over 40%, right? And they break it down in gender and so on. But when you talk about just young people, unemployment is really, really high. And the young people are getting impatient, and they want jobs. And then power shedding, load shedding, chronic situation of load shedding in South Africa. And what I realize is that there's a heavy reliance on coal. I guess they have a lot of coal, so coal forms a part of the whole power grid. But again, there seems to have been, and it's a state-owned power company, Ekron or something like that, a state-owned power company, and they have not. Obviously, I can see a situation where they are. It's not as well managed as you could think. The capital allocation in terms of reinvestment in order to keep ahead of demand, that has not been happening. In fact, I read where it's 10 years ago where load shedding actually became a staple, and it is still a staple today. And there's an understanding that it affects the poorer people more than it affects the wealthy people, because I'm sure those who have a little bit more, and obviously, they can buy the generators, and they probably, that's how they probably deal with the situation. Poor people in the townships and so on, they can't do that. So so that brings me to the next point: the inequality. The inequality in South Africa is really, really, really bad. It's wide. We know about inequality in Jamaica too, but South Africa is really bad, right? And so those are some of the issues. And I think they also, affirmative action is something that the ANC has tried to push. The DA, remember now, they are looking to see if they can be the coalition partner, but they are against affirmative action, right? So when you get into some of the whole things about who you join with, what are the policies that are going to be, where the compromise is going to take place. So it is, it's really at this point a kind of a, how should I put it? It's it's a difficult road ahead. And the other thing I should mention about Zuma is 82 years old and not in good health. Now, I don't know if he Ramaphosa is not going to want to give up the presidency. So if Zuma holds to that, then it's not gonna happen. The DA is not demanding that Ramaphosa must resign as president, and neither is the EFF, right? So it does look as though those, unless Zuma changes his mind, but you could very well see. And then I was also looking at a report which said that there is talk. A lot of people are pushing the DA as the most likely or the best partner. But you can see where within the ANC there is the undercurrent, because look, all these years we were fighting against white domination. And what, you're gonna go back and just choose white domination? Or it does seem contrary to where South Africa is coming from. So that's an issue, because the liberation struggle was long and bitter, and people don't forget these things. So even though, as I said, the DA has a pretty good track record in terms of managing the provinces that it has a majority in, and so on, there is a situation about, does South Africa really want to be in a situation where the whites are re-emerging as leaders of the country? So that is something that is really also an issue that one can't just ignore. I want to let me just look back at some of the, okay. Let me just check on some of my notes. We've gone through the election results. We know who has what. There is okay. Just making sure I've covered some of the things that I wanted to do. So right now, after the final count, there's a 14-day period that is allowed for the government to be formed, right? I think they have 14 days. So there is a time limit. I'm not sure what happens if it's not, if there's no government, if there's no agreement, but there is a 14-day period. So it does suggest that this is, you guys have to come to some compromise and decide on who the government is, who's gonna form the government. Now, another thing I'd mention, how are ministers chosen? This is interesting. The prime minister, sorry, not the prime minister, but the president chooses all the ministers. He's allowed to choose, I think, a maximum of 2 who are not in the parliament. In the parliament, I think that's how I understand it. But typically, the leader, the president, chooses ministers from his own party. In the past, Mandela had chosen ministers from outside of the ANC. I don't know if I could call it a token number, but I mean, he did do that. Ramaphosa has also a record of having chosen ministers outside of his party. But it will be but now they're forced to, because here's what part of the whole thing is going to lead to. When you have a coalition, people are going to want either you get a ministry, or you're gonna get a province, where you can actually lead, or and I've heard people say, well, they want Johannesburg, or Joburg, as you might want to call it in popular pop culture nowadays. But what I'm saying is, because I should mention, just to give that some context, whereas we vote for an MP and we know who the MP is, And remember I said that on the national and the provincial level, you vote for parties. So after the election is done and it is determined who is the winner or what is the proportional representation, how many seats are going to be allocated to you, then the party decides who the representative is for that particular area. And I think they've broken up the country into about 52, I think you have about 19 provinces. I'm not sure if that of that number, but it's something like that. And then you have about 52 different regions, which is where at the local government level, you have these areas that you are now able to allocate who is going to be the representative for that. So I wonder if that is also a fault in the system, because when we agitate for, if we live in a particular area and we know who our MT is, we can go to the MP or we can know who is working, who is not working. But it's not as if to say, and he's gonna do what he does because he wants to go back to the people for them to elect him the next time. Oh, that's how it's supposed to work. In South Africa, you don't really even choose. Well, at the local level you do, but at the other level, you don't really choose. So that those 400 people who sit in the assembly, you don't really actually choose them. The party designates them based on the number that they are allocated. That's out of the 400. And at the provincial level, it's something similar. So I don't know if that has anything to do with the way South Africa is run. But then who are we to talk? Because we have this other system, and not as if to say we are, on our A game. But corruption is clearly a thing. And when I hear about corruption like this, it reminds me of the Singapore story and Lee Kuan Yew and even the people who have followed him. Lee Kuan Yew is not even dead yet; he's still alive. But even the people who have taken over, that is something they root out. And his policy was, where there's corruption, it doesn't matter if the leader was part of the corrupt practices. It was under your watch, so you go. And if the need is for criminal charges are gonna be passed. And that's really how Singapore, but if it has to be top down, and it is not very clear that the leaders who have assumed the presidency have been, corruption free. And there's definitely cases where we can say that, there's this cloud hanging over them. What time is it now? Let me just check. Okay, it's 8:09. I think this is a good point to pause, because as I said, I have more stuff that I had put together in my notes, but I think this is a good point to pause and invite those to comment. But I'm gonna take liberty and ask my friend Michael. I don't know if he has been keeping up with what's happening in South Africa, but I'm sure, having spent some time there, he would have a perspective. So I'm gonna ask Mike if he would like to open your mic and share a perspective of what you think is happening in South Africa today.
Okay, Stuart, thanks. What I'd like to do is give you more context in terms of the current government structure that they use, and to raise another issue that is part of the political dynamics, which is basically, for want of a better word, tribal loyalties.
Okay.
Actually, the current president was the chairman of the Constitutional Commission that wrote the Constitution. It's really not really a municipal national kind of thing. I would more describe it as more like the US in terms of states and in relation to the operations at the municipal level. Because the municipal level not only deal with things like municipal services, but they deal with things like education, health, all of the business around governance are part of the what we call the municipal services that each province is responsible for. The other thing I wanted to raise is that South Africa is going through a problem now that relates to the dynamics around the tribal groups in South Africa. Mandela, in his wisdom, actually had set out a succession arrangement. And maybe I should just also say that in terms of the elections, each party has their own internal elections. And based on that internal elections, the member of the party or the party that wins usually provides the president. And they usually then, based on the number and the percentage of votes that the internal officers of the party get, determine how many people or who goes into parliament. For example, in Mandela time, Winnie got, I think, the 4th or the 5th largest number of votes. And although there was estrangement between her and Mandela at the time, she was the 4th highest ranking ANC member of parliament because she got the 4th highest amount of votes in the ANC voting arrangement. And this runs through all of the parties. So what now happens is that you mentioned MK. Mandela was a COSA. There are 7 major tribal groups in South Africa, right? The most dominant tribe in South Africa are the Zulus. Zuma is a Zulu. And the Zulus were originally part of the IFP, which had the blessing of the king. But when that faded away, basically, the support for the IFP split between the ANC and what you call it, the Democratic Party. So the more, and let me give you the racial groups. 81% of South Africans are Black. What we used to be called, and 8% are white. 7% was what was originally called the coloreds. Right? And 7% are Indians. South Africa, the largest population of Indians outside of India in terms of numbers. And so what happened is that the ANC always had more than 50%, but there were 3 or 4 minority parties, including a party, I can't remember the name of it, that represented the coloreds, who are more from Cape Town side. Now, they and some of the IFP people have in fact migrated to the Democratic Party.
Could that
So
be
the
the one
Democratic Party is no longer dominantly a white party. Well, if you know, in a way things worked in the earlier days, a lot of the Indian and the colored population identified not with the ANC, but they were more right-wing and tend to drift towards the Democratic Party. The other major party at the time was the National Party, which was the Afrikaners Party that just fell off the radar after Mandela. Because remember, Mandela, when he was president, the deputy president was Buthelezi, who was from the IFP. The second deputy president was de Klerk, was from the National Party. So there was a coalition government the first time around, even although the ANC had 75% of the national vote, of the popular vote at the national level. And so what is happening now is that because the Zulus were the largest group, the actual leaders of the ANC during the transition was Mandela, Mbeki, Ramaphosa, and another politician who has dropped off the radar named Tokyo Sikwali. Those were the dominant ANC members at the time. The ANC originally was started by Robert Latuli, who was a Zulu. He is the one who brought Mandela into the party. Now, one of the things that the National Party was doing at the time of the election and the transition is trying to stop the Zulus to tell them that if they allow Mandela to become president as a Xhosa, that they would be subservient, the Zulus would become subservient to the Xhosa party, because both Mandela and Mbeki were Xhosas. Ramaphosa come from a minority party, the vendors, right? And so Ramaphosa left politics and went into business. He's probably one of the richest South African blacks. He's the first black South African to be part of what they call at the time, the Johannesburg Round Table. That is CEOs who manage companies above a certain, is like the Forbes personalities in the American system. So he is the first and black man who was head of that. When Mbeki was in power, or what the transition went to Mbeki, South Africa was enjoying 7 and 9% a year growth. Conflict developed between him and Zuma, partly because Zuma wanted to come to power, and the succession planning was that Mandela, Mbeki, Zuma, and then a similar kind of succession planning would go down the line to ensure that the kind of political infighting and thing could be controlled. Zuma became impatient and wanted to get rid of Mbeki. And there was genuine concern that a lot of the what was called the last generation of South African freedom fighters who had no skills and who basically were fighters who came out of guerrilla warfare into a new South Africa, had no skills to now take advantage of the high growth that was taking place in South Africa at the time. So you had this new middle-class black group, many of whom were people because of what you call it, the arrangement to infuse more black people into the leadership of the country, right? A lot of those who came back were not freedom fighters, but guys from Harvard and Russia and things who were people with skills that could now benefit from the new South Africa. So there was a middle class, black middle class that was developing that basically identified with Mbeki, and the freedom fighters who now had no skills and were basically still working in the mines and had kind of menial kind of employment opportunities were siding with Zuma. Mbeki stepped aside, Zuma took over. Now, one of the reasons why Zuma was on the list, he wasn't a freedom fighter. Zuma is a Zulu who was part of the royal house of the Zulu nation. And he was the emissary that Mandela sent to the king, King Goodwill Zwelithini, that prevented the Zulus from not joining the transition, and was being pushed by the National Party, which is the divide and rule group, to remain as a separate entity, which would then dilute the strength of the ANC. So in terms of the succession, that is part of the problem. Now, Zuma, who is not as committed, well, this is my words now, in respect of the economic struggles per se. And he was a playboy and not a freedom fighter per se. Got into all kinds of corruption stuff. And so the ANC leadership brought in Ramaphosa to depose him because he was under indictment for a lot of corruption issues, you know, with selling arms, with all kinds of stuff, in collusion with people who were identified as not working in the best interests of the new South Africa. And so he was pushed aside by the ANC. And Ramaphosa retired from business and was brought back because he is basically the chairman and the author of the Constitution that they were now working with. Some of the arguments about corruption of Ramaphosa, some of it is contrived by the Democratic Party to try and undermine his position, because he's a big landowner. He owns a big reserve where he sells exotic, you know, elephants, whatever, to zoos and whatever. And there was some argument that monies was found in his house that he was more than legally should have, but he wasn't really accused of basically dipping in the
public purse.
The public purse. So that is a general thing. So I think one of the things now is that MK, which is part of the disillusion group that comes from the freedom fighters, who feels, and justifiably so, that the transition to a multi-party system in South Africa where everybody has a vote has not benefited them. And then because of the presidency of Zuma, where the economic growth took a slide. At one stage, South Africa, even when they were contemplating being part of BRICS, was considered the highest growth in terms of African countries. And that fell off the radar when Zuma came into power. Hence, they got rid of Zuma, brought in Ramaphosa. Now, the MK now, which was part of the ANC, because they are predominantly Zulu, the Zuma and Zuma's group has in fact kind of stoking the tribal war issue, and the mantra of a Zulu is that they are the only Black nation that was never colonized by the Europeans. If you remember, there were wars, the Zulu
Shaka Zulu
wars where they were never colonized,
but
like
okay,
some of the other tribes. And so
right.
as a result of that, that is some of the dynamics that is playing out. Now, my personal view is that at the end of the day, it is incumbent on the new leadership or the current leadership of the ANC to find some kind of coalition government, because it was always the intention of Mandela, right? To have a politics that was inclusive and not exclude any group. There is clearly a unfair advantage by the large percentage of remaining white South Africans, and something has to be done to change that. One of the issues that is causing the high unemployment is the decline in the amount of mining, gold mining and platinum and that is going on. That provided most of the employment for Black South Africans, along with the fact that they're moving away from, they have a Newcastle, where I think South Africa, the 10th largest deposit of coal in the world. And so they are now moving away from coal. And so that in of itself is creating economic dislocation in the areas where coal is mined. And I'm not sure about this, but South Africa is a nuclear power, So Western and Southern Cape Town are nuclear powered. And I think there's some issue with the US and the atomic energy, whatever, that is in fact stymied in their ability to expand nuclear energy as a source of energy, which is part of the logjam now with the electrical crisis that they have.
Yes,
so I just stop there in terms of just a background, in terms of my own. Last time I was there was 2016. My daughter actually went 2022. I didn't go back because of COVID, and I haven't gotten back there yet.
Well, Mike, thank you very much. That aspect of the tribal thing has added another dimension, which I hadn't really researched, that in terms of the background of the various people, was a very important factor. But have you learned? Do you know much about Malema? I believe that the whole land situation, it cannot remain like that. It cannot remain like that. And have you second guessed? Okay, Mandela wanted things to be inclusive, but could he have done a better job in terms of what the constitution that was initially agreed upon? What do you think now in retrospect?
I think the constitution is a hybrid between Chinese and what we are used to in terms of the US. The difference is that there are a lot of competing parties. China only have one party. But what happened is that they have a meritocracy system in terms of who rise to the leadership of the country in terms of governance. But because of, in my view, the impatience and the lack of vision, for want of a better word, of Zuma. The whole process of transition actually benefited the right-wing political ideology that is still predominantly white in South Africa. The issue about land, is that a large chunk of South African lands is actually controlled by the tribes. If you go into KwaZulu-Natal, which is a sugar belt, right? A large chunk of that land is controlled by what they call the Nkosi. They have a kind of different land tenure system. The problem is just like how Soweto was a large black urban area without any light. A lot of the arable lands, which is predominantly in KwaZulu-Natal, which is Zulu, is actually developed in terms of infrastructure to convert from sugar to other crops. So again, that is a part of the unemployment thing because of the collapse of the price of sugar. A lot of the employment that was provided by agriculture was provided for primary products like sugar. And sugar is now in significant decline. And that transition has not taken place. There is still a lot of lands in the control of tribal groups that if the investment was put into those lands for irrigation and development as agriculture. But you have to change the tenure system because literally how the tribal land situation is, is that you occupy the land at the
behest of the king.
The behest of the Nkosi. And if you upset the Nkosi, him can just throw you off of the land.
So it's hard to really make a commitment
tribal land tenure system works.
Okay.
So there are some things that need to be done, which have a cultural side to it in terms of changing the whole question of rural land tenure and ownership that don't have to happen initially. I mean, most of the lands that are controlled by white farmers are in areas with, I mean, Johannesburg and most of that side where a lot of the fruits and stuff, and Cape Town is semi-arid, but they bring water all the way from Swaziland down to those areas, and those are the most productive agricultural lands. There are other lands in South Africa that could be more suited for agriculture, but the infrastructure to develop those lands are not there. And so it's a focus of the government. All of that was upended when Mbeki was turfed out by Zuma.
Oh boy. Okay, I want to open it up to thanks, Mike. I mean, I really appreciate your contribution. And I'm gonna ask you a question, but I want you to think about it, and then when we get some questions, then I'm gonna ask you to answer that question. And I tell you what I want to ask you: how can South Africa really get over this? I mean, it's the second largest economy by GDP in Africa, right? And so wealth is there, is no question. But you have explained some of the things that are preventing it. But I'm gonna come back to you and ask you to, is there any kind of recipe, I mean, that you could think of that would help? I mean, you have mentioned a few, but I'll come back to you on that. Ladies and gentlemen, President Newton, maybe you'd like to do the extension now.
Yes.
And then we take a few questions if there are any, and then we can wrap.
Thank you, DP Stewart. Can I have a member of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston move for an extension of 10 minutes for us to complete our business?
Yeah, so moved. I move.
Moved by DP Stewart, seconded by Can I have a
will
second?
second it. It look like it.
Who seconded it? Will it?
I was saying I would second it.
Okay, Mike. Okay, Mike.
DP Earl. And DP Earl, just remember there's an important date coming up, sir. Okay, continue, DP Stewart.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. I don't see any hands up. I don't know if anybody would like to ask a question. I don't know if Stephen, can you check the chat and just see if there's anything in the chat? Just in case you have some shy people. Okay, I see a question. Okay, tell me what you saw a question, Stephen, or somebody raised something in the chat.
I'm checking now. One moment.
Okay, well, let me go to PP Robert. Robert has his hand up. Go ahead, Robert.
A pleasant good night. Interestingly, after you and I had talked, I note what DP Mike said, that 81% of South Africa black population. I'm glad I came. I did not know that South Africa had the Indian group. And thanks for the information about the tribes.
But Gandhi used to live in South Africa. If you think back on that, so there was an Indian population from way back. Anyway, go on, continue.
Yeah, man, and I really thank for the information. Well, as I said, I did my research. I know about the provinces and the amount, the 9 different provinces, and the political system, because I did my research, but I really didn't know about the tribal part. So I'm thankful for that. But one thing I found strange that they have a 70, either 60 or 70 part of their South African population as Christianity. Yeah, they are the first black people to have same-sex marriage. I kind of found that interesting. Yeah, the pastor law on that.
You mean they have a law that approves same-sex marriage? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, man, they approved a law for same-sex marriage. I know. Okay. I saw it in the reading when I did my research, and as I said, that noticed that they have a 70, either 60 or 70% Christianity. So I found that,
Okay, I hadn't come across that, but I look it up. Okay, thanks for that, Roberts. Is there? Wait, I see. Do you have 2 hands up? How come we have 2 devices?
You also know there's a large Muslim population in Cape Town.
Okay. Yes. Thanks for that. Anybody who else has a hand up? Who is this? Oh, is this Dalma James? No, that's not Dalma James. Is it a DP James? Who? Oh, yes. Go ahead, DP James. Where's St. Andrew? Do you have your hand up, DP James? I'm looking at the name on the screen. Have you is it that you're not mute? You're still muted? I don't know. Okay, that hand has come down. Okay.
No questions as yet, DP Stewart.
Okay. In the chat. Okay, thank you. Is there a way? All right, there must be a way. There's gonna be a government of South Africa in the next 2 weeks or so. I don't think it has to. They have to form something. How do you see the future of South Africa then, Mike? I mean, in terms of where they are now, and with all the tribal issues that you have added to the mix as part of the dynamics.
I can't say I haven't been there since 2016, although I have friends who I communicate with down there. I am optimistic that given the bulk of the South Africans forward thinking and ideological mindset, that they will come up with a way to get past this hurdle. South Africa is a huge economy. As you say, it's the 2nd largest economy in Africa. But there are some, when I went there in 2016, it was a little heartrending to see the amount of people on the street begging, and you could pick up that a lot of them really have not gotten the opportunity to get the skills that are necessary, along with the entrepreneurial activity that I think. I mean, you go to Johannesburg now, and even some of the townships, and there is such a significant difference. That like Jamaica in terms of construction, but still, that is now being enjoyed primarily by the educated Blacks and the continued legacy whites who originally control everything. And the question is, I don't know, Zuma is, he's 82. The court said that he can't be in political leadership anymore. I don't know what his game is, and I can't say that the people in the MK and the other left-leaning parties, to what extent they have a coherent kind of strategy to deal with the suffering of most of that 40% unemployment,
One of the things okay, finish your thought.
I just think that based on the legacy of Mandela, and if that can be rekindled, they will find a way. Ramaphosa is a bright man, and he came out of politics, him and Tokyo Sikwali, because they are from minority tribes. And because the concern was that they wouldn't get the acceptance of the mass of the population. I think there are nine ethnic groups, Bantu ethnic groups. The Zulus, I think, control around 45% of that group. Vendors is like 5%, and so that, I think, is a dynamic that Mandela understood and was trying to get around. And with the shortening of Mbeki's time, I don't know, it probably would have happened anyway, given the structure of the economy, but there was fantastic growth during Mandela time and during the first.
Which is probably why their popular vote went up to 70%.
And a first world country. And I suspect that they have the wherewithal to solve some of the problems that they have. They need to redirect that to benefiting.
One last question, and then we can wrap. Do you the Democratic Alliance? I think that's what the DA means, or something like that. Do you think the climate in South Africa would allow or would welcome, let's use that term, an alliance with the Democratic Alliance? Because obviously a lot of Black people are voting for them, because which is why I said that, although I can characterize it as the white party, they have Black support as well as the coloreds. Do you think that would be something that the average South African would find acceptable?
My view on it is that you cannot ignore MK. Right? MK represents the unemployed freedom fighter who has not benefited from the transition in terms of job opportunity. I think South Africa and the legacy of Mandela was always to have an inclusive kind of politics, but you can't. The opposition party business don't work as well in South Africa like how we understand it here in Jamaica.
So you kind of would like to see then, you think an alliance with the MK would be good. But I wonder if
No, I'm not just saying that. I'm saying that what Mandela had a communist, Afrikaner, a Zulu political leader, along with all of the other groups in the South African body politics in his government. I think a government, what has happened is that they have shifted away from that to power politics, where, you know, is the power elite in the ANC, or which was controlled at one stage by Zuma, who really dominates the politics and really not looking out at the wider interests. I think there is a need to move back to
a but then still
interest.
Yeah, but then still,
how
you still have to have a.
do it, I don't know.
But what I mean is that, sorry, there still has to be a coalition.
Yes.
So therefore, in a sense,
but
then
this is a forced coalition, no, not a voluntary one.
Yeah.
As under Mandela and Becky.
So then you're saying then that then Zuma now would have to back off, or I don't know. It's not really. He didn't really form this party. He didn't really start this party, but he started supporting them, and I don't know if it's because of his support.
A leader of the party, you know.
Right.
And the court said that based on his conviction, he can no longer, based on the Constitution, run for public office. That's
so
what
therefore,
the Constitution said.
right?
So he has no say unless him get them to overturn the Constitution. And 14% support not going to overturn, even although that is total Zulu support.
So then MK can ignore Zuma then. The MK, the body, the people can ignore Zuma. In other words, because Zuma is the one who has come out and said that for the MK to perform a coalition with the ANC, Ramaphosa has to go. He has said that. So does he have the influence to really prevent that coalition unless Zuma decides to back down? And that's what I'm trying to understand.
I don't know. I honestly don't know. What I know is that Ramaphosa is the one who put him in jail.
Yes, that is why he's probably saying that. Yes.
No, but not just that, he's probably said Ramaphosa couldn't do that unless he had the backing of the majority of the Zulus. It's just that there is that 14%. I would suspect that 12% of that is disenchanted to the fact of the name. MK is what the freedom fighters, guerrilla fighters.
Oh, that name, yeah. Because I couldn't pronounce the M and what the M is for and what the K is for. I just couldn't pronounce.
So that group is making a statement. They cannot be left out. They have to be included into any growth and any prosperity that South Africa.
Okay, let's wrap now. But I say I just DP James, you had disappeared before when you had your hand up. So yeah, I'm gonna allow you to, and then that would be the last question. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I tried. Let me not waste any time. I was driving, and I tried.
Okay.
And interestingly, I like this kind of discussion in respect. But however, I would just like to speak on the result of the election itself, which was conducted last week, Wednesday, in South Africa. Because interestingly, when I look at the results and the seats, we have over 50 odd, I mean, just as what you say. But in fact, the top five, when I look at the top five, 2019 and 2024, the ANC, you know, reduced significantly by nearly a lot of seats. But look at it, interestingly, the Democratic Alliance made an inroad.
No. Sorry about that. The Democrat, they didn't increase. The Democratic
Yes.
Alliance didn't. No, not much.
Yes,
Not
yes,
Democratic
yes.
Alliance used to have
Not-
25%. Them have
Yes,
20%.
yes, yes.
No,
Just
they didn't.
not percentage. Please, please,
No.
please, Stuart. Just a moment, please. In terms, they move from 84.
No, hold on. Let me correct you. When you say 84, you're talking about seats, right?
Yes, yes,
It's
yes.
proportional representation.
Yes, but
yes, so when we talk
this-
about the popular vote, no, sorry,
Please.
let me just short circuit this. When we talk about percentages, that is what counts, because it's from the popular vote that determines how many seats you get.
Yes,
so
I
forget
do
about
understand.
seats. And talk about percentages.
No. But interestingly, 2024, as I based on my research, what I'm seeing, I'm not just talking about the proportion in respect to votes, but they're talking about the number of seats.
No, that's not relevant right now.
All right.
It's not relevant. I'm sorry.
All
It's
right.
not relevant. What I could say to you though, let me just
look at the voter turnout. Let us look at the voter turnout. The voter turnout was 66% in 2019, and now it is 58%. That's a reduction. But are we aware of the bond freeze? I've heard you have a person who lives in South Africa, but based on my research, there's a bond freeze. The persons who are 30 years and under, they regard them as a spoiler. They are the spoiler nowadays. They are the ones who do not care about ANC, and they are not likely, they did not vote for ANC. And about 60% of them did not vote. And if they voted for DA, or they voted not for ANC, most of them. So that is something that we need to look at in the future. Persons who have not experienced apartheid. And next one, just do it quickly. Just before we move on to it. Do we know that Zuma will be going to court next year, 2025, for corruption charges in the court?
We talked about that before.
Oh, we talked about that already.
Yeah.
And I am saying, based on the election that had just gone in South Africa, I believe Zuma is smiling at this time. He's smiling.
But did you hear what Mike said?
Yes, he's a disruptor.
No, that's not his. Mike didn't use that word.
No,
what Mike said, no.
I said Stewie. I didn't say that. I said Stewie. I see him as victorious right now. He has embarrassed Mr. Ramaphosa. Yes, yes,
but yeah, I agree with you, but to a certain extent. But let me just say this: Mike pointed out is that he cannot hold office again.
Yes, we know that.
Barred from holding office.
Yes, I know that. I know that
he cannot become president of South Africa again.
Stewie, I know that very well, Stewie, based on research. But what I'm saying, Stewie, analyzing the result, look at it. MK get a large percentage, which makes it very difficult for ANC to go through, because ANC, we know for the first time, has lost its majority. So you have to seek a coalition. And what Mr. Zuma is doing now is saying, hey, I am making noise. You have to give me some attention. You have to give me some attention, even if I can become the president again. And I'm going to make it difficult for you, Mr. Ramaphosa. That's how I see it.
No, thanks for that. But I think while you're driving, I think you missed some of the discussion that was taking place. But let me just mention one thing, and then this is the final comment.
Yes,
one thing, the EFF in 2019, the Economic Freedom Fighters, they had a bigger majority. They are the ones who lost ground, because they had about 11.5% or 11.8% in 2019.
Yes,
and now they have about 9.5.
9%, yes.
Right. So they are the ones who mathematically lost the most.
A pro-left party.
Pro-left party, led by Julius Malema. But anyway, gentlemen, I think we have exhausted the topic. I mean, surely we could discuss it some more, but President Newman,
Yeah.
I would like to hand it back to you.
Stewie. I
Yeah, man.
enjoyed Stewie, but certain things I'm talking about there, I don't concur with them. All right, next time, may you talk personally and Mr. Archer if we want to talk. Not everything I concur with.
Okay. Okay. If it was a little earlier in the
that is
program,
all
we
right.
probably
That
could
is okay.
we could clarify that. But anyway, it's too late now. All right. President Newton,
Thank you,
your time.
Thank you, DP Stewart. You know, this is one of those topics that probably warrant a part two. You know, great presentation by DP Stewart and Sir Mike. And I know it's past some people's bedtime, so I'm going to ask DP Rupert to quickly give the double-barrel vote of thanks because both presenters did extremely well. DP Rupert.
Thank you, Prez. I must say that these men have been brilliant. I just want to thank DP Stewart again. Boy, every time I wonder what he's gonna come up with, he surprises me personally. I know the young ones among us don't know the history of the South African affair. And those of us who grew up with it, I still remember my mother crying when I was a youngster when Mandela went off to prison, thinking that he would never get out. I still remember Bob Marley and others singing, "When is South Africa and other countries in Africa going to be free?" And it's good to hear. It's good to hear the good news, but it's good to also be brought down to reality sometimes. And thank you, DP Stewart. Mike, so good to hear you. I haven't seen you in a long time, but good to have you, man. Thank you so much for sharing. You probably need to lead a cruise or something down to South Africa, man, and take some of us with you. Thank you for being here. Thank you again, DP Stewart. On behalf of all of us who are here, DP Stewart, I don't think we should give you a certificate. You know, we need to give you an honor.
I didn't make one.
No, I didn't say that. You need to get an honorary degree, man, or something. And from Mike, we probably need to make him the consul for South Africa and Jamaica. Thank you, gentlemen, on behalf of all of us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, DP Rupert, and so say all of us. Okay, Sergeant at Zuri, are you on, sir? Are you on, Sarge? All right, the Sarge may be on his way to South Africa, I don't know. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to ask each member of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston, make sure you get the account number for the club and send in $300 as your contribution for tonight. You could not have been treated to such a presentation as you have tonight and think it hard to send in $300 to the club as your contribution without the Sarge having to dig it out of you. All right. At this point, we're going to have notices and announcements and interclubbing opportunities by Secretary DLG William Reason.
Thank you, President Newton. The board members, officers, and directors, please note that the board meeting that was postponed from last night has been rescheduled for next week, Monday. This will be a face-to-face meeting at the Secretariat starting at 7. Please note in your diaries, because it's very important that we attend this meeting as there are some very important issues to be discussed. The Kiwanis International Convention, which most of us know by now, has been held in Denver, Colorado from July 4th to the 6th. Registration is now open for those who are interested in going. And the 3rd Divisional Council meeting for Division 23 Central is going to be held on Sunday. I have them. 1 minute, let me confirm this. I have it as July 21. And then in interclubbing those are the notices for now, President Newton. Interclubbing opportunities, I will advise members of the interclubbing opportunities for the rest of this week by circular. Thank you very much. President, you may want to ask any club if they have their announcements to make. Cheers.
Thank you, DLG Willie. Okay. Are there any club is there any club online that has any sort of an announcement that they'd like to make? Please feel free to open your microphone and do so now. Any?
Sorry, President, I should mention that we did have an invitation from the Kiwanis Club of Mandela to their anniversary meeting, which has been held on June the 20th. Of course, you know that they are one of our children. So we should try to go down there. A few of us go down there and visit with them. But I will send out a notice tomorrow.
Okay, thank you, Secretary William. Okay, there being no other announcement, we ask DP Marcel to bless us with the thought for the week. DP Marcel?
If he's not on, I think I can throw in one, President Newton.
Boy, you're on fire tonight, DP Stewart. Please go ahead.
This is not meant to be taken too seriously, but I found it interesting, and I think there's some truth to it. It says men socialize by insulting each other, but they don't really mean it. Women, on the other hand, socialize by complimenting each other, but they don't really mean it either. That's my thought, just one.
Thank you, sir. And I will not give my thought on it in case I get myself in trouble. So thank you for that. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate everyone who attended this meeting tonight. Special thanks to DP Stewart and Mike Archer for a really enlightening presentation. Well, I will say a presentation, because they both bonded so well together. It was as if it was one presentation. It was great having you all here, and we appreciate it. So it's now 3 minutes past 9. I know it's sometime past some person's bedtime. We do apologize for running a bit over, but sometimes the topic gets so interesting that it cannot fit into the regular time. So at this point, 4 minutes past 9, I'm going to ask you all to raise your glasses and raise a toast to Kiwanis International, Jamaica Land We Love. This meeting of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston is now terminated. Thank you for coming. See you next week. Thank you, DLG Gertlin, and everyone else. We'll see you next week, same time, same place. And